Hello everyone, my name is Mr. Roeder, as my students like to call me Mr. Sam, and I am reading books to kids with permission of Scholastic. So I've been doing this for quite a while now. This is, I believe, my 18th stream of books, I believe. I was trying to do a count yesterday. I think that's where I'm at. There's about 18 of these now. So definitely follow along. If you have access to Mixer.com, that's where all my videos are currently uploaded to. I am going to be adjusting that so that you'd be able to access them through YouTube as well. So that's a little bit of a process to do. I need to reload all of these videos up to YouTube, but they will be there shortly. But for today, I'm coming to you to read you a book by Judy Blume called Superfudge. This is part 4 of it. It's our last 2 chapters of the book. So a little bit about myself again. My name is Mr. Roeder, as my students like to call me Mr. Sam. I'm a special education teacher at Middleton Elementary School here in Sherwood, Oregon. And Scholastic has lifted a lot of their copyrights specifically for teachers so that we can be able to continue reading books to our students. So without further ado, again, this is permission of Scholastic. We're going to continue Judy Blume's Superfudge, the last 2 chapters. So if you have this book, follow along. We're on chapter 11 right now. There are other videos. There should be 3 other parts to this that you can be able to access. And we can actually follow along all the way through the book. If you don't have the book, well, you can always just listen to this and I hope you enjoy it. So again, here we go with Superfudge chapter 11. Chapter 11, Catastrophes. Dad stopped talking about his book. I had the feeling it wasn't going very well. Instead, he talked about growing vegetables and how to cook them Chinese style. Or about the Princeton University hockey team. He took me to all their home games. When Jimmy Fargo comes to visit, he joins us. I'm really into violence, Jimmy said. I think hockey is a great game. It's a lot bloodier than football, and there are more team fights. That's not what hockey is all about, my dad argued. It's a game of skill, of timing, of precision. Yeah, sure, Jimmy said. I know all that, but it's still great to see the blood bounce on the ice. Blood bounces on ice? I asked. Yeah, Jimmy said, and so does vomit. See, it has to do with the temperature of the ice versus the temperature of the body, and Jimmy, please, Dad said, turning a little green. It's true, Mr. Hatcher. They both bounce on ice. Maybe so, but that's not the reason we're going to the games. I know, Jimmy said, but it's a nice side event. Dad shook his head and began to check off players' names on the list inside his program. Jimmy leaned across me and tapped Dad's arm. I'm not a violent person, Mr. Hatcher. Don't get me wrong. Don't get the wrong idea. It's just that it's a healthy way to use up some of my aggressive energy. Hey, Jimmy, I said. Yeah, shut up. Okay. Sure, Jimmy said, and he was quiet until nearly the end of the 3rd period when 4 of the players got into a fight. Then he stood up and yelled, Kill! Kill! I tugged at his sweater until he sat back down again. Later, when I was in bed and Jimmy was in his sleeping bag, he said, I've been seeing the school psychologist twice a week. She says I have a lot of anger because my parents split up. Take my word for it, Peter, divorce is a catastrophe. You should watch your parents all the time and listen to every word they say so they can't ever take you by surprise. For the next couple of weeks, I paid close attention to my parents, looking for possible signs of divorce. But I didn't see or hear anything unusual, and soon I got tired of watching and listening. Besides, whenever my parents fight, they wind up laughing. In February, we celebrated Tootsie's 1st birthday. She carried on a family tradition of smashing her fist into the birthday cake. Grandma, who believed in handing out gifts for everyone, not just the birthday person, brought me a 4-color ballpoint pen, and Fudge, a new Brian Tumpkin book. Read, Fudge told Grandma. She took him on her lap and read him the first story about Ura, one of Brian Tumpkin's characters. I used to really like his books when I was a little kid, I said. I'm not a little kid, Fudge reminded me. Next year I'll be in first grade. You want to see a little kid? Look at the birthday girl. The birthday girl was sitting in her high chair making a mess. Grandma had brought her a new baby-proof cup, one that refused to turn over no matter how hard Tootsie tried. Finally, Tootsie screeched, picked up the cup, and dumped her milk over her head. Tootsie's first birthday party could go down as a real catastrophe, I said. What's a catastrophe? Fudge said. It's when something goes wrong, I said. Or when everything goes wrong, Mom added. Talk about catastrophes. 6 weeks later, Tootsie learned to walk. At first, it was just a few feet at a time from Mom to Dad, or from me to Fudge. But pretty soon, she was toddling all over the place. Sometimes she'd crash land, and if no one was watching, she'd laugh and start all over again. But if she caught one of us looking at her, she'd start bawling and wouldn't stop until she got an arrowroot cookie. And Tootsie wasn't the only one crash landing. Fudge was learning to ride his bicycle. One of his major problems was stopping. Instead of using his brakes, he kept trying to jump off while his bike was still going. I was wrong when I told him he might get a couple of scraped knees. Elbows, knees, head were more like it, constantly. But he refused to give up. He was really determined to get to ride to school. Finally, towards the end of April, Mom and Dad decided that Fudge had mastered the art of bike riding well enough to ride to school with Daniel, who had learned on his front lawn, just the way he said he would, without a bruise or a scrape anywhere. And it would have turned out okay if only Fudge had remembered to use his brakes when we got to the bike rack at school. But he didn't, so he crashed into the rack, knocking down a pile of bikes, and he wound up with scraped elbows, scraped knees, and torn jeans. Don't tell Mommy, Fudge said, or she'll never let me ride to school again. I think Mommy's going to notice anyway, I said. You're a mess. I carried him to the nurse's room. Miss Elliot washed off his cuts and bruises with peroxide, and when she did, Fudge let out a howl. Not that I blamed him. I could practically feel the sting myself. But Fudge didn't stop with one howl. He kept it up, making such a racket that Mr. Green, the principal, heard him and came running down the hall. What's going on in here? Mr. Green said. Scraped knees and elbows, Miss Elliot said. Scraped knees and elbows, Mr. Green repeated. When I was a boy, I had scraped knees and elbows all the time. Used to roller skate and fell down week after week. Fudge sniffed and said, Too bad you weren't any good at it. Who said I wasn't any good at it? Mr. Green asked. You just said you were always falling down, Fudge said. That's because I took a lot of chances, Mr. Green said. Now, I want you to hurry back to your classroom, because you're having a surprise visitor in a little while. Who is it? Fudge asked. It's a very famous man, someone who writes and illustrates children's books. His name is Brian Tumpkin. Brian Tumpkin is alive? Fudge asked. Alive and well, and on his way to our school. Brian Tumpkin is alive! I never knew that. Did you know that, PETA? I never thought about it, I said. Mr. Green faced Miss Elliot and said, Lucky break for all of us that he's agreed to do a program for our girls and boys. I'm afraid I don't know who he is, Miss Elliot said. Then you must be dumber than I thought, Fudge told her. First, you put peroxide on my cuts without blowing to take away the sting, and now you don't know who Brian Tumpkin is? I never blow on cuts. You can spread germs that way. Mommy always blows when she puts on peroxide. Yes, well, let's get back to our classroom now. It's almost time for our special program. At 10 o'clock, we all filed into the auditorium. Then Miss Morgan, the librarian, introduced Brian Tumpkin, telling us that millions of kids have read and loved his books and how lucky we were that he was able to make a last-minute stop at our school. Brian Tumpkin walked on stage. He was tall, with gray hair and a gray beard. He waved to us. Then he turned and beckoned to someone backstage. I brought a friend with me, he said. Come on, hurry up. The boys and girls are waiting for you. Nobody came out on stage, but Brian Tumpkin pretended that you're ahead. He pretended to be holding Ura's hand, and he kept talking to him as if he were really there. I thought, either this guy is really wacko or he's a great actor. Finally, he looked out at the audience and asked if any of us saw Ura. Someone down front called out, "I see him." I didn't even have to look. I knew who that voice belonged to. "You see," Brian Tumpkin told the rest of us, "one of you can see Ura. Come on up here, young man." Next thing I knew, Fudge was on stage. I slid down in my seat. "What's your name, young man?" "Fudge." "That's an unusual name." "I know it," Fudge said. "How would you feel about helping me out today, Fudge?" "It's a real privilege," Fudge said. I couldn't believe it. He finally learned how to use the word. You could see that Brian Tumpkin was impressed. He said, "Well, it's a real privilege for me, too." "That makes it unanimous," Fudge said. "My, you certainly have an impressive vocabulary," Brian Tumpkin said. "I learned a lot of words at home." "That's wonderful. Some of them I'm not allowed to say in school. Some of them my bird can say. His name is Uncle Feather." I slid lower down in my chair. "What grade are you in, Fudge?" "Kindergarten." "Who is your teacher?" "I started out in Ratface's class, but now I'm in Miss Ziv's class. She's a lot nicer than Ratface." I covered my face with my hands. Let's get on with our chalk talk now, shall we?" Brian Tumpkin said. "What's a chalk talk?" Fudge asked. "I'm going to sit down at my easel," Brian Tumpkin said, walking across the stage. "And you're going to describe a person to me, and I'm going to draw the person you describe. Do you think you can do that?" "Yes," said Fudge. "It's a man." "Oh, I'll need more help than that," Mr. Tumpkin said, picking up a piece of chalk. "Is he tall or short?" "He's tall," Fudge said, "and he's got a fat belly that hangs over his pants, and he's mostly bald, but he's got some hair around the edges, and he wears glasses, and he's got a pointy nose and a mustache that curls down around his mouth." Mr. Tumpkin was drawing as fast as Fudge was talking. "And he's got a crooked front tooth, and his feet are very long, and he walks like this," Fudge said, giving us a demonstration. "Like a duck?" Brian Tumpkin asked. "Yes." All of a sudden, I knew who Fudge was describing, and I wanted to get out of the auditorium as fast as I could. But then Fudge looked out at the audience and called, "Where are you?" "Peter, I can't see you." And I knew that I couldn't get up without having everybody look at me. So I slouched down as low as I could and didn't answer. "Peter, can you see me?" I let out a groan. Joanne, who was sitting behind me, giggled. "I can't find my brother," Fudge told Brian Tumpkin. "You'll find him later. Now, you haven't told me what this man is wearing." "Oh, he's wearing a blue shirt and a tie with stripes and brown pants and brown socks and brown shoes and brown shoelaces." "Brown shoelaces? Okay, there we are." He brushed off his hands and held up the picture. Does he look like anyone you know, Fudge?" "Yes," Fudge said. "Who?" Brian Tumpkin asked. "Mr. Green," Fudge said. The audience laughed. "Who is Mr. Green?" "The principal." Now the audience began to roar. "Oh dear, oh my." He put his hands on his mouth, and you could see that he was trying hard not to laugh. Mr. Green went up on the stage then and introduced himself to Brian Tumpkin. They shook hands. Mr. Green said, "I think that's a wonderful drawing, and I'd like to have it for my office. Would you sign it for me?" "Certainly," Brian Tumpkin said. "I'm very glad you like it." He signed his name across the drawing and handed it to Mr. Green. Everyone clapped. Then Fudge said, "Mr. Green, was this a catastrophe?" And Mr. Green laughed and said, "Not quite, Fudge, but I'm sure you'll try harder next time." I was sure too. Chapter 12. Tootsie Speaks Out. One morning in May, Fudge woke me. "Hurry up," he said. "You're going to be late for school." "Go away," I mumbled, but he pulled off my blanket and shook me. "You're really going to be late for school." I looked at my clock radio. 10 after 8. How come my alarm didn't go off? I wondered as I jumped out of bed. I raced into the bathroom, splashed cold water on my face, threw on some clothes, and headed downstairs. It was quiet in the kitchen. "Where is everyone?" I asked. "Ha ha ha ha," Fudge sang, jumping up and down. "Ha ha 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 ha. It's Saturday. I really fooled you, didn't I?" "You little..." But he was out the back door and running before I could get my hands on him. I clunked back upstairs and got into bed. "I'm going to kill that little kid," I told myself. "I'm going to tear him to little pieces. I'm going to..." I tossed and turned, but it was no use. I couldn't go back to sleep. I heard Tootsie babbling. I got up and walked down the hall to her room. She was sitting up in her crib, flinging out toys one at a time. She stood up when she saw me and held out her arms. I lifted her out of her crib. "Yuck," I said. "You're smelly." I set her down on her table and changed her diaper. "Yuck," I said again. The worst thing about babies is diapers. I cleaned her up and dumped plenty of baby powder on her backside. "Yuck," Tootsie said. "That's right," I told her. "Yuck." I carried her down to the kitchen, put her in her high chair, and gave her a bowl of dry cereal to nibble on. Fudge peeked in the back door. As soon as he saw me, he took off again, but this time I chased him. When I caught up, I turned him upside down and tossed him over my shoulder and carried him back into the house. "I'll scream," he said. "You do, and you're dead," I told him. "If you hurt me, I'll tell," he said. "Go ahead and tell." I kicked open the kitchen door. When Tootsie saw Fudge upside down, she clapped her hands and laughed. But then Fudge's face had turned dark red. "Put me down! Put me down!" Fudge cried. "Never," I said. "It was just a joke," he whined. "Can't you even take a joke?" "Some joke." "Put me down!" "Say please." "Please." "Please what?" "Please put me down." "Say you'll never wake me up on a Saturday morning again." "I'll never wake you up on a Saturday morning again." "Or a Sunday." "Or a Sunday." "Or a holiday." "Or a holiday." "Tell me how sorry you are that you did it today," I said. "I'm sorry." "How sorry?" "Very sorry." "Very, very sorry?" I asked. "Yes, very, very, very sorry." I stood him up and watched as the blood drained from his face and his color changed from bright purple to flush. "Ha ha," he said, wiggling away from me. "I had my fingers crossed behind my back the whole time, so ha ha ha, none of what I just said is true." He dashed out of the back door again. I shook my head. "Yuck," Tootsie said, and then she tossed her bowl of dry cereal to the floor. "How come you're up so early, Peter?" Mom asked an hour later as she pulled her robe around her and yawned. "It's a long story." "Well, it certainly is a beautiful day. No point in wasting it." She poured a cup of milk for Tootsie. "Where's Fudge?" "Outside with Turtle." "He's such an early bird," Mom said. "The early bird catches the worm." Mom nodded and made herself a cup of coffee. I went over to Alex's house. "Let's do something exciting today," I said. "Like what?" Alex asked. "That's the problem," I said. "I don't know." "We could dig worms for Miss Moldor," Alex suggested. "No, it's too early for worms. I told her the fattest ones aren't ready until late summer." "Well then." "What?" "We have to think," I said. We sat on the sofa watching stupid Saturday morning cartoons for the next hour. I got an idea in the middle of Spider-Man. "How about a picnic?" I said. "It's a perfect day for a picnic." "Where would we have it at?" Alex asked. "I don't know." Alex scratched his head. "How about the lake? We could watch the university crew rowing while we have lunch." "Yeah, that's a good idea," I said. "What have you got to eat?" "Probably nothing," Alex said. We both went into the kitchen. "My mother shops on Saturday afternoons." He opened the fridge. "I was right," he said, slamming the door. "Nothing." "My father shops on Fridays," I said. "Let's go see what we have." At my house we found cold chicken, tomatoes, rye bread, fresh fruits, and frozen lemonade. "Great," Alex said. "Let's pack up." I went to work making sandwiches while Alex fixed a thermos of lemonade. "Don't forget the salt," Alex said. "Right, and the mayonnaise," I added. "You can't bring mayonnaise on a picnic," Alex said. "Why not?" "It's too gooey, and besides, it can make you sick." "Says who?" My mother once got food poisoning from eating potato salad on a camping trip. But we're not taking potato salad. It was the mayonnaise in the potato salad that did it, Alex said. But we're not going camping. We're going to the lake. I don't want any mayonnaise on my food. None. Okay, fine, I told him, and I spread mayonnaise on my 2 pieces of bread. And don't forget the salt. I took the salt shaker out of the lunch bag, held it up, and just to make my point, sprinkled some of it onto his head. Very funny, he said, shaking it off. The screen door slammed. It was Fudge and Turtle. Turtle dove into his water dish and started slurping. Fudge looked around. What are you doing? What does it look like we're doing? Making lunch? That's right, we're going on a picnic. We are? Fudge asked. Not we, I told him. Us. Me and Alex. Where are you going for the picnic? The lake. I'll come too. Oh, no, you won't. Why not? Because you're not invited, that's why. But I like picnics, and I like the lake. Too bad. And I said I was sorry, remember? Yeah, I said. And you also told me you had your fingers crossed behind your back, so everything you said was a lie. That was a joke, Fudge said. I didn't really have them crossed. You know what happens to kids who lie? I asked. No, what? You'll find out. I shoved him out of the way. He ran out, back calling, Mommy, Mommy, please, can I go to the lake with PETA? No, Mom said. Why not? Because it's too far. There's a lot of traffic on that road. Fudge stomped his feet and yelled, I want to go to the lake. I want to go on a picnic, too. When he saw us come outside with our lunch bag, he raced towards me and attached himself to my leg. Take me, take me, take me, he begged. Get lost, I said, kicking my leg free. Call Daniel. Count ladybugs. Do something. Fudge covered his ears with his hands, opened his mouth, and screamed. He's going to wind up with a sore throat, Alex said. Come on, let's get out of here. We hopped on our bikes and coasted down the driveway. Fudge picked up a couple of rocks and hurled them at us, but he missed. We could still hear him screaming 2 blocks away. Alex had to be home for his piano lessons at 3:30, and by then we'd seen enough of the crew rowing and more than enough of the bugs down by the lake. Mom and Dad were working on the garden when I rode into the driveway, and Tootsie was asleep in a lounge chair. Did you have a nice picnic? Mom asked. It was fun, I said. A lot of ants, but fun. Don't forget to rinse the thermos, Dad said. I won't, I said. Where's Fudge? I haven't seen him since you left, Dad said. He's probably at Daniel's. He was very angry, Mom said. I noticed. At 4, the phone rang. It was Daniel's mother. She asked me to tell Daniel it was time to go home. He's not here, I said. Then where is he? She asked. I don't know, I said. Wait a minute. I put the phone down, went to the back door and called. It's Miss Manham. She's looking for Daniel. Mom ran into the house, wiping her hands on her jeans. She picked up the phone. Miss Manham? We thought Fudge was at your house. No, not since 11:30 or so. You found what? Oh, no. You don't suppose... Yes, of course. Right away. She hung up the phone. What is it? Dad asked. He was standing at the door listening. She found Daniel's piggy bank. Smashed. All the money is gone. Mom zipped upstairs to Fudge's room. Dad and I followed. Bonjour, Uncle Feather said. Where does he keep that bank Grandma gave him for his birthday? Mom asked, ignoring Uncle Feather. Here it is, I said, finding it on his shelf, and it's empty. Bonjour, stupid, Uncle Feather said. Oh, shut up, I told him. Shut up yourself. Shut up yourself. Yourself. How much do you think he had in there? Mom asked. About $2.50. He was counting it the other night. So, between them, they have close to $7, Mom said. Seven, Uncle Feather repeated. They can't get far on $7, I said. Peter, please, Mom said. A few minutes later, Miss Ma'am pulled up in a red sports car. She was wearing cutoffs, a t-shirt that said ski the bumps, and sneakers with the toes cut out. Her hair was in one long braid. that hung down her back. "We think they might have gone to the lake," Dad told her. "The lake? My God, Daniel can't swim. Neither can Fudge," Mom said. "Yes, he can. He can doggy paddle," I told her. "Peter, please." "Anyway, why would they go swimming in the lake?" "It's too gloopy for swimming," I said. "Peter, please," Dad said. "Please what?" I finally asked. "Please be quiet. We're thinking." "Let's not waste any more time," Miss Madam said. "The sooner we start looking for them, the sooner we might find them." "Warren," Mom said, "you go with Miss Madam. I'll stay here with Peter just in case they try to phone us." When they'd left, Mom asked me to bring Tootsie inside. She was still sound asleep on the lounge chair. I picked her up and carried her into the house. She opened her eyes, and when she saw it was me, she smiled and said, "Yuck." At 5, the phone rang. This is it, I thought. It's all over. They found him, splattered across the road. His bike is a mangled mess. Or maybe the Princeton crew has found him. Maybe they've dragged him out of the lake, his face blue and swollen. I felt a big lump in my throat. If only I'd let him come on the picnic with me, none of this would have happened. If only I had wanted to kill him when he woke me up this morning. Now it was too late. I pictured the funeral. Fudge, Daniel, side by side, in small white coffins. "Peter, would you get the phone?" Mom said. I picked up the receiver. "Hello?" I almost can't get the words out. How was I going to tell Mom if it was bad news? "Hi, Peter." "Fudge? Where are you?" "Guess." "The train station." "Nope." "The bus station." "Nope." "The police station." "Nope." "Do you give up?" "Yes, where are you?" "At Sandy's bakery." "What?" "Sandy's bakery." "Down by the highway?" "Yes." "You rode all the way to the highway." "It was easy. Is Daniel with you?" "Yes." Mom grabbed the phone out of my hand. "Fudgy, my angel, I'm so glad you're all right. We've been so worried." "Don't move. Not an inch. I'll be right down there to get you." We jumped into the car. I arranged Tootsie in her car seat and we took off. We found Dad and Miss Motor driving around by the lake. Told them the good news and they followed us all the way to the traffic circle and the highway. Fudge and Daniel were standing outside the bakery. They looked very small. Fudge was holding a paper bag with Sandy's printed on it. Mom parked, jumped out of the car, and hugged Fudge. "I'm so glad to see you." I felt another different kind of lump in my throat this time. "Be careful, Mommy. You'll squish my brownies," Fudge said. When we got back to our house, Fudge settled into Mom's favorite chair and said, "We went to the deli next to Sandy's for lunch. We shared a pastrami sandwich." "We each had 3 pickles," Daniel added, relaxing in Dad's chair, "and an ice cream soda and a cream soda." Mom, Dad, and Miss Vam sat in a row on the sofa facing the runaways. "You know that what you did today was wrong," Mom began. "It was inconsiderate and foolish," Dad said. "Not to mention dangerous," Mom added. "And stupid," I said. "And while we're very glad to see you," Miss Mam said, "we're also very angry." "Very," Mom said. "And you'll have to be punished," Dad said. Fudge and Daniel looked at each other. "What do you suggest?" Dad asked them. "Put us to bed at 8 o'clock tonight," Fudge said. "That doesn't seem appropriate," Mom said. 7 o'clock, Daniel asked, yawning. "Yes, because you're tired, but that's not a suitable punishment." "Why don't you take away their bicycles for a month?" I suggested, expecting everyone to shout, "Peter, please." Suddenly the room was very quiet. "No!" Fudge shouted. "Not fair," Daniel hollered. Mom, Dad, and Miss Madam exchanged looks. "I think that makes a lot of sense," Dad finally said. "I think so too," Miss Madam said. "I agree," Mom said. I couldn't believe it. They'd finally taken me seriously. "But how will we get to school?" Fudge asked, pouting. "You'll walk," Mom told him, "the way you did before you had bicycles." "But Mommy, if you love me..." "It's because I love you. It's because we all love you and care about you." Fudge stood up and stomped his feet. I'm sorry I bought you any brownies. Dad took their bicycles, chained them together, and set them on a shelf in the garage. I hope you both learn that you can't run away every time something happens that you don't like. Running away doesn't solve anything, Mom said. We had a good time, so ha ha, Daniel said. And a good lunch, Fudge said. And we showed you we are old enough to ride to the lake, so there. Oh, no you didn't. You showed us you aren't ready for the privilege of riding your bicycles. Fudge and Daniel looked at each other again, and this time they both started crying. We ordered pizza for supper. Daniel stopped crying long enough to remind Mom, I don't eat anything with peas or onions. How could I forget? Mom said. After Daniel and Miss Manum had gone home, Mom put her new Mozart CD on the stereo, and we sat around the living room table, working on our family picture puzzle. It's a mountain scene at sunset, and so far we've got one corner of it put together. PETA ran away one time, Fudge said, chewing on a piece of puzzle. I took it away from him and said, I thought about running away, but I never went through with it. I found a matching piece and snapped it into place. And Daddy ran away when he didn't want to work anymore, Fudge said, stacking up the orange pieces. What are you talking about? Dad asked. That's why we moved to Princeton, isn't it? Fudge said. No, of course not, Dad told him. Whatever gave you that idea? I figured it out myself, Fudge said. Well, that's just not true, Dad said. Then why did we come to Princeton? Fudge asked. For a change, Dad explains. That's why I wanted to go to the lake, Fudge said. For a change. Speaking of Princeton and changes, Mom said, polishing off her third brownie, Millie and George will be back soon, and we have to decide what to do. What do you mean? I said. Well, either we have to find another house here, or we have to get ready to move back to the city. You mean we have a choice? I asked. I always thought we were living in Princeton for the year, and that was that. Tootsie toddled over, reached up, grabbed a handful of sunset pieces, and ran away with them. Hey, come back with those, I said, chasing her across the room. I handed her a rubber mouse, and she dropped the puzzle pieces. I'm not crazy about the idea of commuting, Dad said, but if the rest of you want to stay in Princeton, I'll do it. Commuting? I asked. Yes, I'm going back to work at the agency. No more writing? I asked. Not for now. I found out I'm not very good at it. I may never finish my book. I knew he would, but I didn't say so. I'm very good at advertising, though, and I'm anxious to get back to work. But that doesn't mean I want to be president of the agency, Peter. I know, I said. What about you, Mom? What are you going to do? Well, with Daddy going back to work at the agency, I'd really like to get started on my art history classes, maybe at NYU. That's in the city, isn't it? Yes, in Greenwichville. So, you both want to go back to the city? I asked. They touched hands and Mom said, I guess we do. What about you, Peter? Dad asked. What do you want to do? I don't know, I said. I'm used to it here, but I still miss New York. I don't remember New York, Fudge said. Oh, of course you do, I told him. No, I don't, he said. Can I ride my bike there? In some places, I said, like Central Park. I remember Central Park, Fudge said. And you remember our apartment? I told him. And the elevator, and Henry. Oh, that's right, I forgot about Henry and the elevator. Mom and Dad laughed. What about you, Tootsie? Where do you want to live? Princeton or New York? Yuck, Tootsie said. Did you hear that, Fudge asked. Yuck, Tootsie said again. Mom and Dad exchanged a surprised look. That's Tootsie's first word. She wants to live in New York, too. Yuck, Tootsie said. I realized that I was the only one who knew that Tootsie had been saying yuck all day, and I wasn't about to tell them that I had nothing to do with the city, and that it had nothing to do with the city. That makes it unanimous, Fudge said. What a big word, Mom said. I know a lot of big words. You'd be surprised at how many big words I know. Fudgy, you're just full of surprises. So we're going back, I thought. Back to the Big Apple. back to our apartment, back to Jimmy Fargo and Sheila Tubman and my rock in the park, back to Walking Turtle and back to the Pooper Scooper. But it's worth it. It's all worth it. I picked up Tootsie and swung her around. I couldn't help laughing, and Tootsie laughed too. To some people, there's no place like New Yuck, and I guess I'm one of them. And that's the end. So again, that was Judy Blume's Superfudge, being read to you by permission of Scholastic. Completed the whole book. So this was the fourth part to the book. So if you weren't reading along with us on all the other parts, definitely don't hesitate to go back. Mixer.com, Mr_Rotor is where you can find me. All my videos are currently up there. I'm also working on setting up my YouTube channel, which will also be Mr_Rotor at YouTube, and you'll be able to find these videos there as well. So I hope you enjoyed this, and stick around. Maybe I'll have some more videos coming up here shortly.